talked about how to use event goals and objectives to actually create an effective marketing plan. And this week, we actually want to dive a little deeper into those 7 different event objectives. As I call them, the 7 C's to event ROI. So if you are not yet familiar with myself or some of my processes optimizing events, we are partnering with the Savvy Networker. We also have an event group, Masterminds and Events, and we would love to join each other in that community where we share some of our resources, our templates, some more videos. So either way, if you're just jumping on, if you know us, if not, feel free to check out some of our other videos and resources, and let's get started. All right, so the 7 C's to event ROI. What are they? Why are they important? And how do we utilize them? I'm going to first list them out, and then we'll just dive at a very high level. We have more resources, but number 1 is cash flow. What sort of cash flow is your event bringing in? We can measure that. Number 2, community connection. Are you using the event to connect with your community? Number 3 would be to create buzz and campaigns and awareness. We can measure that. Number 4 would be the customer journey and the experience altogether. Number 5 being the criteria of the contributors and the supporters of the event. Number 6, credibility. And number 7, the conversion from the outreach to the sale. Okay, so if we're using events as a marketing platform, how are we using these 7 objectives to measure if the event is a success or not? Okay, so those are the 7 C's of event ROI. Now what do we do with them? Last week's video, you're going to want to revisit, use it as a prerequisite, so to say, because last week's video, what we talked about more is how to take those 7 C's, those 7 objectives, and prioritize them, creating goals so that you can then create a task list to then create your marketing plan, okay? So this week, what we want to dive into, I have some examples for each one of effective goals that you can create within each of these 7 C's. Let's start with cash flow. Cash flow meaning how much money is coming in for the event, but how much also has to go out, right? So if you're using the event as a marketing or sales platform, what are your goals? Here are 3 suggested goals. Generate X amount of revenue within 3 months post-event. Perhaps another one could be close 3 customers within 6 months that generate X amount of dollars. Another goal could be limit the event budget to X amount. So those are all cash flow related goals. Okay, let's talk about community connection. What are some examples of those goals? Meet and greet X% of the attendees. So if we know how many attendees there are, how many of them do we want to create meaningful connections, actually measure how many are we meeting and greeting. Another one could be to engage directly with a certain percent of attendees on social media before the event begins. Again, what are some goals that directly tie to that objective? Follow X% of attendees on social media. Perhaps you can even get specific with that goal on a certain platform, whether it be LinkedIn or Facebook. So those are community connection examples of how you can obtain that objective. Let's talk about creating buzz, creating awareness, and using campaigns to reach that objective. Here's some examples. X% of attendees follow you on social media. So if you're creating buzz and you're creating a campaign, how effective is that being on social media? How many click-throughs are happening on that post through that campaign, right? What is the conversion rate from when they see your post to how many are actually converting into your call to action, right? So those are ways that we may measure through an email sequence or creating buzz through a PR statement. Here's an example of creating customer journey. One would be surveys. So X amount of attendees fill out an 80 to 100% of event satisfaction, right? Sending a follow-up email to qualified leads, right? So if this is an example, if you're using the event to perhaps qualify leads through a workshop, depending on your type of event, depending why you're doing the event, point being, what is the customer journey and how many qualify to get to the next stage of that journey? Okay, so perhaps it's fill in the sales pipeline with X amount of qualified leads from the event. Okay, so those are some examples of creating specific goals. Engage with X amount of attendees that qualify for the next stage of your customer journey. All right, here are some examples for contributors and how you can really measure if you are attracting the right criteria of the contributors. So these could be supporters in the sense of sponsors, exhibitors, attendees. Be featured on X amount of credible platforms, podcasts that have the same audience. So you're collaborating with other contributors by getting on a certain amount of platforms in front of a new but the same target audience, right? Obtain X amount of warm introductions from those contributors. So if they already have a market that share your target audience, a great goal could be to have X amount of warm introductions from that contributor. Arrange collaborative efforts with X amount of strategic partners. How many new contributors, strategic partners, referral partners, right? How many more of those partnerships do you want to create based on having this event? So when you're meeting people by having an event or sponsoring an event, not everyone is going to be a qualified lead. Not everyone is a prospect. So we want to stop treating everyone that we meet as a prospect, because they could in fact be a wonderful referral partner, strategic partner. Yet if we're trying to sell to them or solicit to them as a lead or as a prospect without even knowing who they are yet or why they're there, we could actually be missing out on potential strategic partners, okay? So we want to create both meaningful connections, referral partners, strategic partners, potential leads, depending on the type of event, what is appropriate. Credibility. Here are some examples. Cross-promote with those strategic partners. Get X amount of testimonials from past attendees, sponsors, projects before the event begins. So you're building up that credibility, and get X amount of testimonials and surveys post-event from other credible sources that can then boost up that credibility. Get your event published or have PR media coverage to build up that credibility, right? Get X amount of reviews from the event, the seminar, it could be a workshop, it could be a get-together, whatever it may be. What are the specific goals to build up credibility? And lastly, the conversion from your outreach to sales. And this is what I mean by this. Only in the sense that you're having an event for marketing purposes or to actually convert them into some sort of sale. So that does not fit every single type of event. Networking events specifically are not necessarily made to sell to people, right? A networking event is there to meet different types of people and identify who they are. But if you're taking an event and you want to convert them from a cold prospect into a warm or hot lead and qualify them, that could be a really good reason why we would take the conversion from the outreach and how many of them actually convert into a sale or into a lead, right? So to fill that pipeline with X amount of qualified leads, I like to really loop back around on that because, again, it's not appropriate for every type of event. So the other point being with cash flow and with conversion of sales, the analogy that I like to use is if you have a workshop, right? And you know, you're a fortune teller, you have a crystal ball, and you know that you're going to walk out of that event with $10,000, right? Hypothetically, right? What the difference of cash flow is and the conversion of outreach to sales is, where does that 10,000 come from, right? Was that one sale out of however many are sitting in the room? Or was that 40% of sales? Okay. And yes, I have some squeaking going on in the background. That's my dog. Some of you may know him. So if you hear that, I don't know if you do. All right. So let's kind of clarify that. If you know you're going to walk away with that event, somehow you know the future with $10,000. That is the cash flow. But the conversion of sales is, well, was that 20%? Was it 40%? Or did you only close 5% or 10%, right? Because if you know that, not only the cash flow, but if you also know the conversion ratio, then you can begin to understand how you can optimize that and know how you can increase from 10,000 to 20,000 to 30,000. Again, these are arbitrary numbers for the case of today's video. So I like to kind of point out some of the differences because there may be some overlap with some of the goals that you're making, and that's okay too. So anyway, those are the 7 C's to event ROI. What you want to do with them is rank them in priority. That way you can then create those specific goals, rewatch last week's video, make sure that you jump into the Masterminds and Events group. That's where we have extra freebies, resources, more videos on all of this. And then once you have your objectives and your specific goals, that's where we can really, really begin to start to list out our tasks of how you're going to obtain those goals for your event. So anyway, jumping off, I hope you all have a wonderful Tuesday, rest of your week. I'm Michelle Nicole. Let me know what questions you have. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us and being a part of our community. Talk to you soon. Bye.